morning, BookTube. This is Felicity speaking to you from my library, and I'm caged in by two projects here. One is a short project. I just learned that Professor Taruskin, one of the very, very well established and important and esteemed musicologists at UC Berkeley, just died. And I happen to have his magnum opus here, the Oxford History of Western Music, which represents his the culmination of all of his scholarly work. He was a fairly contentious musicologist as well, and I think maybe some people are do not have as happy memories. I don't rank that highly. I am a mere musician, and so my acquaintance with him was definitely much more polite, and I also love books, and so when I saw that this particular volume was available, this was actually published all in one go in 2005, and I purchased it then, so I have the set. It is a massive undertaking. It was a massive undertaking, and I have clearly not even dipped my toe in the entire water, but it serves here as a important reference. And anytime I look up any composer or musician or train of musical thought in this set, I have not failed to find what I'm looking for. It's very interesting and very erudite and very full of musical notation, which part doesn't bother me, but really I need some time to study it. Well, maybe I'll get that someday, or maybe I won't. Anyway, I thought I would show. This is actually one of the more important works in my library, and it doesn't get displayed here very often because it's in another room of my house, which is the music part of my library. And I just thought I would bring it out, show it. I have it. Rest in peace, Professor Taruskin, and I am very happy to have this work. So on either side, I'm going to move this out of the way, on either side of Professor Taruskin's massive work, his History of Western Music, I have the next project, which is just sort of, here we are halfway through the new year, and I decided I was very firm. I'm always very firm. I changed my mind very quickly though. Very firm at the beginning of this year, having done a TBR for the entire last year. I determined that I was not going to do the same thing this year, so I did not do a TBR for this year. On the other hand, here I am halfway through the year, and I thought, well, you know what? I think I need to have a little focus on it. My bookmarks are getting more and more thicketed. They're getting more forested, and I'm having more and more books which I started and dipped in here, dipped in there, and time to finish a few. So my TBR for July is a ambitious but not impossible stack of books that I am reading, that I've either just started or am halfway through, or most of the way through, or gradually stepping through bit by bit. And they are here. Here they are, so you can see them. Okay, I'm going to have a quick talk about them. There are two that are not present in this little stack here. One of them is Pride and Prejudice, and also Umberto Eco's The Mysterious Flame of Queen Loana, because those are currently by my chair. Didn't think to bring them over, but those are the other two that I'm currently reading that are part of this, and they are both nearly finished as well. So you just have to take my word for it that they're part of July's TBR. Those two also happen to be amongst the ones that are rereads. I have a few in here that are. Most of these are not rereads. They're new ones to me that I am going through. So let's take a look at these, maybe one by one. Why not? Have a little look at them. I'm going to have seen some of these before because I do tend to have the same things on my shelf for a little while before I finally make them go away. So this one I've already showed. I recently acquired this one, having introduced it myself to it first at from the library, and decided that it was time that I finally found a nice copy of it that I felt that I could own happily. So this is Requiescat's Waning of the Middle Ages. I finished his Homo Ludens last month. It was great. I had that one for a while, and after I read it, I remembered just how much I really appreciate his scholarship. And so now I have this guy here. So this started it again. This is a reread, but it's just begun. Requiescat was a scholar of the Middle Ages. the early period Western history up through the end of the Middle Ages and beginning of the Renaissance. So it's an interesting work, and I will probably give a little bit more of a dip in when I'm a little bit farther back in this one again. So Huizinga's The Waning of the Middle Ages on my TBR for July. All right, this one I am actually pretty much halfway through. This is Basbane's absolutely delightful work on paper. Saw this one some years ago. I think when it first came, I think I mentioned that when it first came out in 2014. Didn't get it then, but got it now, and it is so it is a survey of the making of paper and the history of paper making and what paper is used for and how it has survived the tempests of time. Written as only Nicholas Basbanes can write anything. He's such an amusing and elegant writer. But I really enjoy this. So again, it keeps, every time I pick it up, like with all the books, I pick them up and say, well, why haven't I finished this? Because I have this huge stack here, there, and everywhere of other books that are equally delectable that need to have their time. All the books, all the time. Anyway, this is, let's see a little bit of better focus there. This is Basbane's on paper, and it is on my finish this one in July list. One that I very recently picked up is, of course, I just keep showing the spine because there's nothing on the front cover but mylar sparkly cover, which you can hardly see because the mylar is it's reflecting heavily the everything else except the cover. So this is the biography of Rosenbach by two gentlemen who used to at one point or another worked for A.B. Rosenbach as assistants in his bookshop. And it's Edwin Wolfe and John Fleming. It's very interesting. It's very well researched. They have a lot of materials that were made available to them because they had a very strong personal connection with the Rosenbach, with A.B. Rosenbach and the Rosenbach family. And I am making my way through it. I think that if I give myself a little goal, like, okay, start finishing this one instead of the 100 other books with bookmarks in my library that are tempting, maybe I'll actually get through that before the end of the year. I have other end of the year goals. Yeah, Montaigne is on them too. Now this one I actually got and started last year. Is maybe it was the beginning of this year. I can't remember. Anyway, actually it might have been this year. The early part, one of my first forays out to the bookstore in 2022. Ron Chernow's biography of the Warburg family, and it is fascinating. The Warburgs as a family were interesting, long established, important in the banking industry, important in the intellectual community, where they resided in Germany. The peregrinations of their family, the exile from I think it was Spain, but I'll have to go back. I'll be starting this one. Yeah, there. The bookmark's kind of close to the beginning, to refresh where they were at. And of course, my main interest in the Warburg family still remains A.B. Warburg, who was the Warburg book and library guy, who I was going to say traded his inheritance for a mess of pottage, but that's actually not true. He declined to be part. He verbally declined to his family to be part of their banking empire, but in return asked that he not be stinted any funds to procure books, which he did, and they were wonderful. And I'm happy to say it was a lot of turmoil during leading up to World War II and during it, and certainly after it. And the Warburgs were not unloved, and there was a very strong support base to help get the Warburg Library out of Germany when it was going to be kind of requisitioned. Hey, we have those nice books. You're Jewish. I don't think you need to have them, and I think we do. And the Warburg Library was, in fact, evacuated, if I can use that word, to England, where it became the nucleus of the Warburg Institute, very, very fine institution. It's published some works which I keep running across, and I realize, oh, yeah, the Warburg Institute published that one. I think a couple ones by Francis Yates, who's another one of my literary heroes. So there you go. The Warburgs is obviously not just about him, but he does feature in it, and it is a very well written and fascinating biography of the Warburg family. So time to settle down and finish this one up. So I got 2 biographies so far, which is actually pretty good going for me because I am not a biography kind of person. Don't really enjoy them, except for the fact that I think I said at some point, I finally realized what my problem with biographies is that I was trying to read biographies about people that I didn't care about. And so the cure was to read biographies by well-written biographies by people that write well about people I care about. There you go. So, all right. Next one to finish is this absolutely delectable little collection of the Colophon magazine periodical, which this was winter of 1936. Picked this up at Moe's at the same time. I think it was also the same time I picked up the Warburgs, but a whole bunch of really great books from Moe's at some point. And I can't help myself. I do read fairly quickly, but I certainly buy books an awful lot faster than I can possibly read them in a reasonable amount of time. So that's probably not going to change. But I am tormented by the large stacks of really tasty books that I want to read, and I can't read them all at once despite my brave words, all the books all the time. So the Colophon is on my list to read the entire book. It's not that fat. This is a little collection of magazines all bound together in the month of July. All right. This one. Oh, look, not a biography, a memoir. A memoir. And yeah, this one I've already introduced, I think, and also talked about a couple times because Freya's first in my introduction to memoirs in my library, and this was definitely one of them. And also what I'm reading, because this is what I'm reading, and this is going to continue to be read, and I would like to finish this also in July. This one's actually getting farther along there. It's pretty interesting, and Freya Stark has a wonderful prose style. I still like her travel essays a bit better, but then that's just me and my personal taste. But this is a memoir of her activities during World War II in Yemen and Egypt and other parts in the Sinai Peninsula. Fascinating reading, really. And Freya she was a very good writer, very interesting person. Some time blindness there. Who can possibly deny that? Because it's true for everybody and everywhere. No matter how dispassionate we think we are, we're still colored and flavored by the times we're in. Cannot see when we're up to our in alligators, yada yada. Okay, anyway, so she's on my list to finish in July. This one anyway. There's a lot more of hers in my library. All right, and going from let's still do the big guys here. So this is another reread. This is my very fun Rabelais. The one that I've read the most is, of course, the first one, the very first book of the complete works of Rabelais, which is Gargantua, and the second book is on Pantagruel, his son. And I think I've read Gargantua at least 3 times. This is the 3rd time. And the Pantagruel I've read mostly once, and the rest of them haven't. So time to make that not true. So about halfway through Pantagruel, the second book of this, and then I will set in on the back half of the complete works of Rabelais that I have not read. Well, that should be fun. Trouble with Rabelais, I'm sort of a list addict, and as I'm going through, I keep finding words. It was translated to English, pretty much, and I keep running into words which I look up. I realize there's actually a special website just for vocabulary from Rabelais. It's a thing, and there's a lot of words which I've never met before, really never met before. It's great, and when you realize what he's actually saying, it's hilarious. There you go. So there you go. Rabelais is on the complete works of Rabelais is on my ambitious but not impossible TBR to finish in July. I expect I'll be dipping into the bigger works on my list so that the shorter ones can act as palate cleansers. Yeah, right. So this I know every time I open the book, I go, oh God, there's these really great little pictures. Okay, where's another one? Okay, see, this is one. So the Heath Robinson illustrations, he has, and this is I mean there's practically one on every page. There's the big ones, which are the ones that are really amazing. They're scattered throughout the book, but almost every page has one of these little tiny vignettes in it. And you look closely, he doesn't copy himself ever. They were all different. They're all wonderful with expressions on their faces. So Rabelais. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to having some kind of a focus, not my main strength here. All right. So I had mentioned this one in one of my was the introduction to my library. This is a really important piece that I have. This is the Complete Dialogues of Plato, the Bullingen edition, with some lovely introductions and excellent editors. And again, I sort of acquired this volume because I have a number of the dialogues of Plato in the collected, the Viking portable Plato, and also a couple of Penguin editions of selected other dialogues. But at some point, I think, well, you know, if I ever see the whole thing, I'll pick it up. But I look in the Loeb Library collection that Moe's used, and they would have one or two, and I don't think I want to go that route. So when I saw this, I said, I'll just get this and I'll have them all, and maybe someday I'll have enough Greek to read it in Greek. You're right. So, I shouldn't say that, because if I say that, it will be true. So there you go. But I am, I keep dipping into it, and I keep coming back to my not as nice translation, but very friendly remembered pages from the Viking Portable. And I've decided, okay, this July, I can do this. This July, I am going to read all of the dialogues. I may skim a bit when I get to dialogues that I'm actually pretty familiar with, like the Republic and Phaedo. I think I actually stopped in Phaedo, where I'd gotten so I had read the Apology because I was trying to get myself back up to speed, and then I ended up by stopping because I was reading that amazing little story from the best Russian short stories on Socrates, a fantasy, which was after Socrates' death. The author was imagining that Socrates and some very wealthy Athenian had been, there they were in the land between death and whatever comes next, and it was a sort of a look at how these two people, one a wealthy person, fairly smug, self-satisfied person, and Socrates, who was not, were if you could imagine this thought experiment of actually having some sort of existence after death, what they were going to do next. Charles Williams does that too, only in a very mystical and very interesting way. And I think it was not Descent into Hell. No, it was the other one. It was All Hallows Eve. No, well, remember in a minute. But he does a similar thing where the young lady is she kind of wakes up dead. There has been a plane crash. This is during the war. There's been a plane crash, and she's in it. The plane is shot down, and she's basically under it. And the entire book takes place in a course of a few days with her finding out where she needs to go after she's died, and what she can still do, what she still needs to do before she can move on, and a couple of other, maybe do a Charles Williams thing someday. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, so whether here or there, that was the Socrates defense, and the first three in this book, so Crito and Phaedo, were the three initial dialogues, which Apology isn't, but the three initial dialogues which treat with Plato's trial, imprisonment, and his death. And then after that come all the ones that I don't know so well, all of the other dialogues, and then the ones that I do. So there you go, Plato on my list to read in its entirety before the end of July. This one is maybe the one that's going to make it a little chancy because there are, I don't know, 1,600 pages. We'll see. I'll read that fast. All right, more sizing things. Okay, so then again, this one I bought this one. I got at the same time that my wonderful haul from Moe's not that long ago. The Ill-Tempered Clavichord by S.J. Pearlman. I've read one or two little things from it. Really funny. This is going to be my palate cleanser in between, I don't know, Rabelais and Plato. It's not going to take very long once I get stuck in it. It's less than 300 pages, and it is really funny. It's really sarcastic, and it will be a nice thing to read after all the important highbrow words that have flowed over the top of my head. We'll see. All right, well, that speck's getting very tall over there. All right, now this is one I've actually had on my reading list now for quite some time. My son lent it to me. He has an interesting collection of socialist works, and I asked him for some history, something that talked about the history of a particular period, which was the account of the Haitian Revolution. And this was the story of Toussaint Louverture. It's very interesting history period. Look at the way that people behave. And Toussaint Louverture was a very important character. Did not end well, but what he tried to do was magnificent and heroic, and it did actually pave the way. Now, the actual writing of this, C.L.R. James, I think it's taken me so long to read it because it's a little bit, his prose style is a little bit ponderous. I'm making my way through it because it's one of the few works that I've seen that's actually on this period and about this very important person, and I've decided, let's deal with the prose. You can always look up the things that seem a little bit ponderous, and you can kind of like cut to the chase, do the Wikipedia, do whatever, read the book. So this Black Jacobins is on my list to finish in July. I actually kind of started it. I actually got kind of partway through. Really need to push ahead. Probably going to have to go back a little bit and catch up again. So this is it's the other, so it's 3, but the history of the Spanish Civil War is the 3rd book, which is not here because it's upstairs being a table ornament. That's another one I'm going to finish in July. Looking at, anyway, so this is looking at all the things that led up to the Haitian Revolution, and what happened, how it turned out, and some of the things that happened that maybe if they hadn't happened that way might have had a different result, or it might have been inevitable. In any case, very interesting book to read on a very interesting period. There you go. So it's a little tattered here. Not my book. I didn't do it to it. That's not how I treat my books. There you go. All right, so another one that's nearly finished. This is Haruki Murakami's first person singular. This is definitely a palate cleanser material, and each little story. Not that many left. I think there's only golly, maybe two stories left in the book, and so it'll probably be done before I go back to work tomorrow. We'll see. All right, and okay, so then. This, I was counting this as one thing, but yeah, it's really 2 things. Look, see, 2 books, but they are supposed to be the complete ghost stories of M.R. James, and they're great. I'm not really not into horror. I don't like massacre books. I don't like books with explicit scenes of torture and mayhem and killing. Is really not my kind of thing. I have a couple of tiny exceptions, like Count of Monte Cristo. I will read that, but then most of that book is about a great many other things, and not the bodily harm that people do to each other. And Mark James is not like that. these ghost stories are, they definitely have the unease, the feeling of terror, the feeling of the supernatural, of things that we are afraid of. But there's so far anyway, there's very little explicit violence, which I'm glad. I don't think I would read it if they were, because that's really not my cup of tea. So there we go. And I have just begun. I'm on the third, as I mentioned, I'm on the third story of the first volume. It's the Mezzotint, and so far I'm very much enjoying these. These are also going to be palate cleansers. I got a lot of things to cleanse my palate between. What with Plato and Rosenbach and Warburgs and all those other serious dudes, Black Jacobins, I think I'll be very happy to have this nice little balance of cleanser, palate cleanser. The Spanish Civil War, that's another one. 2 more here on my list. So I think I counted a total of 19, 16 of which are down here. So this one is really, really funny and also really hard to read. Lim was a very scientific dude, and he was also a very fine writer. And of course, this is also translation, although it's not bad. But this Lim, Imaginary Magnitude, is the collection of introductions to books that never were written. And I started it. I had it on my shelf. I usually, again, I never get books I don't want, but I get way more books than I can read in between purchasing times. And then whenever I have another big batch, another big haul, another big bunch of books I bring in, oh, well, I need to read this, and then I'll get to that. And then by and by, they drift off into their proper corner, and then I will be wandering through and find it and say, well, why haven't I read that yet? So, yeah, cutting back a little bit on the book buying this time around. This maybe says I, and perhaps just a little bit more finishing some of the 10,850 books in my library, even though some of those are sheet music. I mean, I do read those too. I have those are also there. I call them books. I have them cataloged in my library thing account, and they too need to be read. I'm reading on my viola or my violin, not with my eyeballs, but it's the same kind of thing. So I've got a lot of reading material. The last one on my list is finishing up Partners in Wonder, which is Harlan Ellison, in conjunction with a number of other fabulous writers. Each one of the stories in here was a collaboration between Harlan Ellison and one of these other dudes. I don't think there's any dudettes in here, and he was not really a dudette kind of a guy. But these are great. These are great. It's an early publication, I think. So the actual copyright of this book was 1971, but the stories themselves were published in 65, 1970s, 62, 69, 59, 57. So these are all pretty early, and the authors are really great. So yeah, that is probably also a palate cleanser. Should have mentioned. So I think Plato is going to get palate cleansed a lot. We'll see. Anyway, so that's my list. That's my list. That's my stack. Thank you, Professor Taruskin, for having produced a notable work that will remain in my library and is an important addition to it. That lifts my level of intelligence whenever I can dip in and read something from it. That is Professor Taruskin. And thank you all you other guys for being there in my library, sitting there, calling to me, asking me to finish reading you. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.